Ellen Simmons for the Rural Radio Network. May is Skin Cancer Awareness Month, and the Nebraska Cancer Coalition is working to educate Nebraskans on the importance of skin cancer prevention. We're joined today by Alicia, Rowell, Vice President at AIM at Melanoma. Now, for a key statistic or fact that people may not know, melanoma, the deadliest type of skin cancer, is estimated to affect roughly 780 Nebraskans in 2025, with a projected 60 lives lost. Now, Alicia, tell us about sunscreen. How does it work, and why is it such a significant tool in the fight against skin cancer?
Well, thank you for having me on today, and I'm happy to tell you about this. In order to understand how sunscreen works and why it's important, we need to understand a little bit about UV radiation and how that affects your skin. So I think I'll start there. What is UV radiation and why is it harmful? So UV radiation is a type of energy produced by the sun. There are three types: UVC, UVB, and UVA. We don't need to worry about UVC, but we definitely need to worry about UVB and UVA. UVB is the primary cause of sunburns and melanoma, the deadliest form of skin cancer, as well as basal cell and squamous cell skin cancers. UVA radiation causes wrinkling and leathering in your skin, and it indirectly causes mutations, which increases your risk of developing skin cancer. So when ultraviolet rays of the sun penetrates your skin's top two layers, the epidermis and the dermis, those UV rays cause DNA damage to the cells in both layers. You have things called melanocytes that live at the basal layer of your skin. And when they get hit with UV light, your melanocytes respond by making melanin. It's this darkening agent in our skin. It's a means of self-protection. Your skin tans to protect itself from burning. Okay, so you burn when your skin can't produce enough melanin to prevent the UV rays from injuring your skin's surface and capillaries. Every burn increases your risk of developing skin cancer. In fact, your risk of melanoma doubles if you've had more than 5 sunburns. And this is the key to remember, the darkening of your skin, whether tan or burn, is objective evidence of DNA damage. The more you damage your DNA, the greater your risk of developing skin cancer. Estimates are that 80 to 90% of skin cancer stems from UV exposure. Okay, so that's all about UV and the damage we probably don't think about every day. Now that we've understood that, I can answer this question: how does sunscreen work and why is it important? Okay, a little bit of background again. Sunscreen contains what we call active ingredients. They are UV filters. They protect the skin from exposure to UVA, UVB, or both. There are 2 types of sunscreen filters. We call them mineral or organic. Mineral filters, they're sometimes called other things, inorganic, physical. They work by deflecting and reflecting UV light. You might have heard of the 2 most common ingredients in US sunscreen that are mineral ingredients, UV filters. Those are zinc oxide and titanium dioxide. The other type of UV filters are organic filters. They're sometimes called chemical. They work by absorbing UV light energy. You put it on your skin and it absorbs the UV light so that it doesn't affect your skin. There are 6 really common active ingredients in US sunscreen that are organic filters. You might have heard of some of those: octinoxate, octisalate, oxybenzone. Most US sunscreens combine 2 or 3 of these filters for the best performance. And when you see a term on sunscreen labels called broad spectrum, that means the sunscreen has filters that protect against both UVA and UVB rays, and that's good. We recommend a broad spectrum sunscreen with a sun protection factor of 30. So in summary about sunscreen and UV rays, we have a toolbox, all of us do, in the fight against skin cancer. And those tools, there's just a few, but they're really powerful, honestly. You can seek shade outside under umbrellas or trees. You can wear protective clothing and hats and sunglasses, and you can use sunscreen. These 3 habits can be incredibly effective. And I wonder myself if we take them for granted a little bit sometimes. I've heard someone say this, think about this for a minute. If scientists invented a lotion that you could put on your skin to prevent breast cancer or lung cancer, and that lotion was available at the drugstore down the street for not very many dollars, we'd be in awe. We'd buy it in an instant.
Mm.
But maybe because it's been available for so long, we forget how amazing this product is. I know this is true for myself too, and maybe it is for your listeners. I think for me, even though I do this work every day, there's a disconnect about the sun and sunscreen and skin cancer because the sun's so warming and comforting, right? And it helps our earth in so many ways. And we feel that warmth and we think, how can this be harmful? It doesn't feel like it should harm us. And for most of the time, time for humans, we didn't understand the connection between UV radiation and skin cancer. But now we do, and we know how to protect ourselves, and we've got a toolbox, and we have the tools to protect ourselves. Sunscreen, clothing, hats, and shade. It's almost too simple, really.
All right. Well, what are a few of the most common misconceptions about sunscreen?
Okay, well, this is important. I think let's start with the worst misconception, and that is that sunscreen causes cancer. It does not. There is absolutely no evidence that sunscreen causes cancer. In fact, the opposite is true. It's actually the only over-the-counter drug on the market with an FDA-approved cancer prevention indication. That's based on decades of evidence. So that's the worst misconception. It's a preventive tool. It doesn't cause cancer. So number one, the other misconceptions are that sunscreen is somehow harmful to you. And I think these misconceptions come from two reports that made huge media splashes in the last few years. So I thought, let's explore those two media reports and what happened. And what's true in a lot of things in life is there's a small kernel of truth that spiraled out of control in the media and social media and word of mouth. So I want to put your listeners at ease. So what's the first of these misconceptions? It's related to the FDA and sunscreens and two studies that they sponsored. Those studies found that some sunscreen ingredients are absorbed through the skin and into the body. And the level at which they were absorbed was high enough that the FDA didn't waive further safety tests. A lot of media and social media misunderstood what happened, and they reported this incorrectly. So two things are really important here. It wasn't that what they found was unsafe. It was that the level hit a certain marker that required more tests just to be extra safe. Remember, safety levels are extremely conservative, and the level to waive safety tests is even more conservative. The FDA tried to message this and explain the nuance. Here are some of the things they said, and these are quotes. The fact that an ingredient is absorbed through the skin and into the body does not mean the ingredient is unsafe. They also said, quote, absorption does not, capital N-O-T, equal risk. The FDA advises continued use of sunscreens. The findings in these studies do not mean that the FDA has concluded that any of the ingredients tested are unsafe for use in sunscreens, nor does the FDA seeking further information indicate such, end quote. So for consumers, what should you take away? What's the most important message? Definitely that absorption doesn't equal risk, and that the findings in these studies do not mean that the FDA has concluded that any of the ingredients tested are unsafe for use in sunscreens. And think about it this way. Many products that we put on our skin are absorbed, deodorant, sunscreens, etc. I mean, sometimes that's the whole point. Simply put, the FDA has certain thresholds for absorption, and further testing is needed when a threshold is exceeded. So again, a kernel of truth started a cascade of misunderstanding. And that's one of the things I want your listeners to understand. The other kernel of truth that came out a few years ago was that a number of products, and these were a wide variety, hand sanitizer, deodorant, sunscreens, some aerosol dry shampoos, some athlete's foot treatments, I think, they were all found to have detectable levels of benzene in them. With respect to sunscreens, it was some spray products. And there were different batches, different brands, and it was only one lab that found this. But we don't want benzene in our products, anything that's going on our skin. And benzene isn't an ingredient that's supposed to be in sunscreen or deodorant. So it's a contamination. And I believe the hypothesis is that maybe during the manufacturing process, it happened. Anyway, like the absorption question, this trace amount was found, and it was just that. It was a trace amount. In fact, we get more daily exposure of benzene from gasoline fumes, cooking over a gas stove, etc., than what was found. So on one hand, you don't want benzene, and it shouldn't be in the product. But number two, walking down the street next to cars is going to give you that more than that amount. So anyway, these products were removed from the market, and that's good. The system worked as it should. That's what we want. And I guess that brings me to this roundabout point about misconceptions. And the key here is risk analysis. This is perhaps the most important point I can make today. With these misconceptions, we're not seeing the forest for the trees. And what I mean by that is we know certain things for a fact. We know UV radiation from the sun is a major cause of skin cancer, including the deadliest form, which is melanoma. It's a real, clear, and proven risk. And we know that sunscreen can help shield your skin and reduce your risk of skin cancer. I want to encourage your listeners to focus less on potential and minute risks and more on real, clear, and proven risks. There is a real risk out there, and it's UV exposure, especially sunburns. Protect your skin.
All right. Well, so for some final thoughts, what's the most important thing you want our listeners to walk away with regarding sun safety?
Okay. So the bottom line here, I'd first note that we expect about 200,000 cases of invasive and non-invasive melanoma this year in the US. And maybe this will put it in perspective. When melanoma is caught early, the survival rate is 98, 99%. When it's caught late, after it's spread throughout your body, the survival rate is about 35%. Each week in 2023, that's the last year I have statistics for, nearly 154 individuals succumbed to melanoma in the US, which means that 22 people died every day. And one person died about every hour, about every 65 minutes. So again, what I already tried to point out is that we have to focus on what we know are facts. Hats, clothing, sunscreen, and shade protect your skin from the sun, from the UV rays, by putting a barrier between the two. And I'll also mention this. The preventative benefit of sunscreen was clearly demonstrated in a large Australian study. It was a randomized study, a very respected study. It was published a long time ago, 2010, but that's okay. This study showed a 50% decreased melanoma risk by using sunscreen regularly. So I've just given all these facts on how many people will die, how many people die per hour. And we've got this tool, this lotion that you can put on, and it's been shown to reduce the risk. This study was critical evidence not only for Australia, they have the highest melanoma rate in the world, but for all countries. Sunscreen works. We know that UV rays are a major risk factor for skin cancer. We know that skin cancer is the most common cancer in the US, and we know that melanoma is the deadliest form of skin cancer. In fact, we know that over 8,400 people will die of melanoma in the US in this year, in 2025. We know that simple steps such as wearing protective clothing, using sunscreen, and seeking shade will help reduce your risk. So my bottom line is enjoy the sun, enjoy it safely, and use your sunscreen.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And if our listeners want to find more information, go to anycancer.org/skincancer. May is Skin Cancer Awareness Month, and the Nebraska Cancer Coalition is working to educate Nebraskans on the importance of skin cancer prevention. To help bring us this message was Alicia Rowell, Vice President at AIM at Melanoma. I'm Ellen Simmons for the Rural Radio Network.